Paula and her husband Simon, a middle-aged couple living in Spain, are driving along a road at night when they see a little girl walking very slowly along the white line on the middle of the road. They stop the car and follow the girl, trying to get her attention without scaring her. Instantly, they realize something is very wrong with the girl, as she looks injured or ill by the slow way in which she is moving. A motorbike heads toward them over the crest of the hill in the road, and strangely, the girl walks straight on towards the motorbike. In an attempt to avoid hitting the girl, the motorbike rider swerves sharply, narrowly missing her and falling off the bike himself. Simon rushes to tend to the motorbike rider, and Paula runs over to hold the girl, who has now collapsed unconscious. At the hospital, Paula and Simon have so many questions about the girl, and the hospital staff tell them that even though she was not hit by the motorbike, she was very sick anyway and needed urgent medical attention. A Spanish detective asks if the girl told them anything about herself or spoke at all, but the couple says she didn't. On the drive home, Paula is feeling tired and falls asleep. They arrive home, and Paula enters her bathroom and closes and locks the door. She has a timer set on her phone and injects herself in the stomach with a needle. Afterwards, she places the needle back in a folder and hides it behind her bathroom mirror. Paula and Simon go to check up on the little girl at the hospital, and the hospital psychologist explains that she thinks her name is Clara because one of their nurses is named Clara, and she responded quite distinctively to that name. They are still talking with the psychologist when she starts to run into the hospital area where Clara is, as other nurses run in. Paula and Simone can hear Clara making distressed noises. When they get into the room, they see Clara inside a chalk square, throwing her toys around. Clara always has chalk drawn around her, or she feels very unsafe. The nurses ask each other what happened, and when they try to touch her, she lashes out. Paula grabs a hold of her and puts her in her lap, sitting inside the chalk square, and Clara calms considerably, stopping all the noises and just resting into Paula's chest. Paula lets the staff know she will stay a while here with her. Later that evening, Paula and Simon return home and head over to their neighbor's house for dinner. Their friends have questions about Clara, including Eduardo's wife, Mate, who asked if she was abused, but so far Paula and Simon let them know they don't know much about her yet, as she is not talking. They don't know who her parents are or where she is from. All they knew is that her kidneys were barely working before treatment at the hospital. The next morning, Paula and Simon visit Clara at the hospital again, but this time they are greatly disturbed for Clara, as she is tied to the hospital bed with restraints and heavily sedated. Simon walks over, and Clara reaches out her hand to him very slowly and he undoes her wrist restraint, but the nurse sees and tells Simon he cannot do that, as she is restrained for safety reasons, and they must leave so they can do their job. Reluctantly, Paula and Simon leave, feeling sad for Clara. Paula looks on her laptop for any news on Clara's case, but the local news says they are still looking for her parents. Her timer goes off for her timed injections, and she goes into the bathroom in a secretive way to inject herself. However, when she puts her needles away in her toiletry bag, she doesn't push the toiletry bag behind the mirror enough, and it is visible. Simone asks to use the toilet, and Paula flushes the toilet as if she has been using it. When Simone comes out, he is acting aloof, and Paula re-enters the bathroom, shocked to see she didn't hide her needles better and puts them in her bedroom instead. They go back to the hospital for a visit to Clara, and the psychologist propositions them to take Clara into her car temporarily because she has formed a bond with them and she is not thriving enough mentally in the hospital. Both of them are delighted to care for Clara. That night they take Clara home and have a bedroom set up for her. They sleep in the same room to be there if Clara wakes up. Paula had drawn a chalk line around her bed so she would feel safe in her bed. In the morning, Paula and Simon wake up just before Clara wakes up and looks around at the chalk lines. Then she sees them and they say hello, but she turns over onto her side shyly. Little by little, Paula gains Clara's trust and expands the chalk line boundaries so that Clara may walk around the house more. She does not ever go over a chalk line border that is drawn for her. Every single drawing that Clara draws has a chalk line square around the item or animal she draws. Gloria, the psychologist, visits Clara, Paula, and Simone and explains to them that she has probably done it all her life. Gloria tries to get Clara to come and play outside with her, leaving the chalk borders, and she tells Clara she will erase the chalk for her, but Clara looks panicked and looks at Paula. Paula feels very protective of Clara and warns Gloria not to do that. Gloria tells her she has to try it and tells Paula to go into the kitchen. Paula feels exceedingly protective and distressed for Clara as Gloria tries to get Clara's attention. Paula and Simon can hear Gloria talking to Clara, and then Clara throws herself on the floor in a meltdown and screams and yells. Clara is yelling out a word that sounds like Booma. Paula rushes in and holds her to calm her down. As Paula holds her, Gloria uses an app on her phone to record her asking Clara questions. She asks her what Booma means. She asks where her house is, and Clara says cried. And when Gloria asks her who she lives with, Clara says mama. She asks about her father, but she does not say anything. Gloria says that if she does not talk to her, she will have to erase the chalk, and then Clara starts to yell and have a meltdown. In the morning, Paula assures Clara she won't force her to talk, and while she is with them, they will make sure nothing bad happens to her. They invite their neighbors over for dinner that night, and their friends ask them questions about Clara. Eduardo notices that Paula is a bit stressed and doesn't have a drink yet, and offers her to go to the kitchen to get her one, to which she says thank you. Claudia says that her son Noah is looking forward to meeting Clara, and suggests she comes over for breakfast at Paula's. Paula smiles and agrees. The next morning at breakfast time, Claudia's daughter gives Clara a hug, but Clara stands there stiff as a board. Claudia tells her daughter that it might have been too intense. Claudia is cheerful and sits down to eat some cereal, when suddenly she starts to look like she is choking, blood drips from her mouth and she is wide-eyed in panic. Paula asks her what is wrong. She coughs up a small shard of glass. Paula is alarmed. Simon comes home from work and asks her how Claudia is, and then grabs Paula's hand to show her something he found. He had opened all their jam jars and discovered small shards of glass in the jar they used for breakfast, insinuating it was Clara. Paula refuses to entertain this idea and thinks there is some other explanation for the glass. Gloria, the psychologist, goes over their voice recordings of Clara's words, and they try to translate some of them. One of them is the word for punishment in German. Simon asks why Paula didn't tell the psychologist about what happened with the glass, and Paula explains she doesn't want it to be misinterpreted. The next day, Paula sits with Clara while she does a puzzle, and tells her in German the last puzzle piece is in her hand, which she understands right away. Paula tries to ask if her parents are from, and if she is from Germany, but Clara does not respond. All of a sudden, Paula hears the washing machine making a weird noise, so she tells Clara she will be back in a minute. Paula finds keys in the washing machine, and the washing machine is leaking a lot and not working. She turns it off and then goes to find Clara, but she cannot find her anywhere. She goes out the front door, considering she may have run off, but then after 10 minutes hears Simon talking to her in the kitchen. She doesn't tell Simon that she went missing for a few minutes, just that the washing machine is broken. When Simon goes back to work, Paula sits down to ask Clara if she was hiding from her before. She asks what she is scared of, and then suggests to Clara to draw it, but Clara lashes out and throws the pencils everywhere. Simon asks her desperately to talk to her, and threatens to erase the chalk. Then Clara becomes angry and upset and pushes Paula and kicks her. Paula sits for a moment, stunned, and then walks out of the room. Gloria visits and talks to Paula about the glass, and asks if Clara attacked her, but Paula said it was because she was forcing her to talk. While Gloria is talking, Clara walks in with a drawing for Paula. It is a small square inside a larger square. 3/4 of it is green and 1/4 is blue. Gloria asks if that is grass, or why the sky is green. Clara doesn't want Gloria to see it, and shows Paula again, and just stares into her eyes as if she can telepathically let Paula know what the picture means. Paula shrugs and says she does not know. And then Clara becomes angry, snatches the drawing out of her hand, and returns to her room. As Gloria and the interpreter are leaving, Paula tries to convince them that Clara is doing well, but Gloria says it is not working out, and she will begin the paperwork for her to be moved somewhere else. After they leave, Simon is upset with Paula that she didn't tell him that Clara attacked her, and Paula said she didn't, she is only 6, and tells him she needs to go out. Simon doesn't want her to leave, as he wants to talk more about it, but she goes out. Paula walks over to Claudia at the school bus stop, and accuses her of telling the psychologist about the glass, and it's her fault Clara is being taken away. Claudia tries to explain, but Paula tells her to mind her business, and then walks back home. That next morning, Paula sits on her laptop listening to the recording of Clara, again trying to find out what the word booma means. She barely acknowledges Simon as he leaves for work. Paula gets up and goes to the kitchen to make herself a tea, and pours milk into it, and then sits back down in the lounge to listen more. She retypes the word booma to try and see if there is a German word like that. Then she types in Bumen, and the recommendation is for Boomen. Just as she types it in, she realizes that there is glass in her throat from the swallow of tea she just took. On the screen, it says Boomen means Bogeman. Paula is in pain, as the glass is in the back of her throat. She tries to cough it up but can't. As goes to stand up, Clara looks worried and tries to hug her ankle. Paula draws a chalk line across the path, so that Clara won't follow her. Paula rushes to her bathroom, and grabs some tweezers to grab the piece of glass out of her throat. Blood drops into the sink, and she tries several times to pull it out. Finally she does. This time when she comes out of the bathroom, Clara is really gone. Her front door is open, and Clara is nowhere to be seen. Gloria and the detectives come over to question Paula about it. Paula sleeps for a short while, and then wakes up to find Claudia, Eduardo, and other friends in her lounge room. They are talking about her. Simon sees her, and is not happy she slept so little. Paula is irritated that everyone is there at her house, as if it's like an intervention, and when Claudia brings up her due date, this pushes Paula over the edge, and she orders everyone out of her house. After they leave, Paula and Simon have an argument, because Simon has found out that she is doing fertility treatment injections on her own without telling him. He is upset she did it in secret, because they agreed to do a year off. Paula tries to explain, but Simon is upset. He tells her she doesn't have to do it alone. Simon confesses he doesn't want Clara back, and that he doesn't like the way she has become obsessed and neglected him, and kept him out of caring for Clara. He shows her glass shards he found in the pouch of the toy penguin, and tells her to explain it, and then he storms off and tells her to eat something or take a bath. After Simon leaves the house, the phone rings and Paula answers it to hear Clara on the other end saying Mama. The detectives interview Paula about the phone call, and reveal to her the call was made from her own mobile phone, and ask if she had it stolen, to which she tells them that it hasn't been. They then take her to have a psychological evaluation. Paula is deeply confused and disturbed by the phone call, and can't explain why it came from her mobile when Clara is nowhere in her house. After the evaluation, the detectives ask Paula to stay close in the area, and while they are not looking, Paula swipes the 2 files the detectives had from the desk and takes them to a nearby cafe to look at them. In them, she discovers documents of a few missing girls. One is named Ingrid, and then there is a photo of her body as well as her autopsy report. She sees photos of her parents, and they have paper angels hanging up, the same ones that Clara knows how to make. Paula takes the autopsy report to the coroner that did the report and asks to see her. The coroner is French, so Paula has someone present to interpret her questions for her. At first, the coroner says she cannot help her with any information, but then Paula asks if she is a mother and please, it's important that she helps her. Reluctantly, the coroner answers her questions. She says she barely remembers, but she does recall her organs were badly damaged and her kidneys were barely functioning. There were also several marks from injuries to her neck. She suffered greatly. Paula goes to a public library and looks up Ingrid's name to find out more about this missing girl. She went missing in 2011 when she was 12. There is a video of her parents being interviewed not long after she went missing, and she is their only child. Paula sees in the video paper angels put up everywhere that Ingrid obviously used to make, just like the ones Clara makes now. Paula returns home and enters the room that Clara had when she was staying with them, determined to figure out what the drawing means that Clara handed to her days before. She holds the drawing in her hand and looks for anything she might have been drawing from. It is rectangular, and it looks the same shape as a window. She looks out the main window that Clara would look out at, and realizes with shock that the picture matches the window with the smaller square in the side matching the position of the neighbor's house within the view of the window. Paula looks from the drawing to her neighbor Eduardo's house, and it matches perfectly. When she looks at the house, she sees Eduardo standing at his window, and when he waves, she waves back. Paula then decides to call the police. She tells the police she suspects Eduardo as being the child kidnapper. By now, Paula's heart is thumping, and what this could mean frightens her. She decides to go over to Eduardo's house. Flashback. Eduardo is driving his car at night and turns around and parks on the side of a dark road. He gets Clara out of the car and places her in the middle of the road. He tells her to follow the chalk line of the road and that he will come back to get her later, but right now she is very ill. He drops her off to walk along the road alone, and he takes off. The night that Paula and Simon invited Eduardo and his wife mate to dinner, Eduardo asks questions if Clara has revealed anything or said anything. He then offers Paula to get her a drink, but while he is in her kitchen, he breaks a wine glass as quietly as he can, and then places glass shards in her jam as well as her milk. The next day, when Paula goes to investigate the loud washing machine, Eduardo sneaks into her house and puts his hand over Clara so she doesn't make a sound, and hides her while Paula desperately tries to find Clara. Eduardo tries to carry her out of her house, but as he gets to the front door, Simon is about to open the door to come inside. Quickly, Eduardo hides in the house and leaves Clara standing in the kitchen while Simon offers her a drink. Paula then talks to Clara and Simon. When they are out of the way in a different part of the house, Eduardo sneaks out of a door and snatches Paula's phone. Eduardo goes home and has lunch with his wife Mate. Mate lets him know she won't be home tomorrow. She is visiting their sons, and Eduardo is not happy about that. He wants their sons to visit them. Mate is uncomfortable with this idea. She ends up changing her mind and saying she will stay, because he reminds her that they are having lunch with Paula the next day. After Clara goes missing and everyone sits in the living room, when Paula wakes up from her nap, it is Eduardo that gives Claudia the idea to tell her new due date, which he knows will trigger Paula, because she has been trying to fall pregnant unsuccessfully for many years. Back to the present. Paula knocks on Eduardo's door and walks in. She sees Eduardo standing in his dining room and asks him if he has any maps. He asks if she is looking for Clara. She says yes. He looks in a cabinet but doesn't find any. And then he says he thinks he has them in another room and asks her to wait in the kitchen. Paula looks around for any sign of Clara and walks a few steps up the stairs, but quietly and quickly walks back down when she thinks she hears him coming. He is seemingly taking a long time, and Paula starts to feel extremely uneasy. She turns around to walk out the front door, but realizes it is locked with a key and she cannot get out. Panic settles in on Paula, and when she turns around, she comes face to face with Eduardo, and he strikes her on the collarbone with the back of a hammer, so the prongs of the hammer head lodge into her collarbone. She screams in agony and falls to the floor. While on the floor, he tries to get the hammer out of her shoulder, and he forces her head to the side as he pulls it out. Blood pours out of her shoulder. He then walks over to his breakfast bar, removes the stools, and opens a secret door that leads to a hidden basement. He walks back over to Paula and drags her by her feet down the stairs into the basement. He drags her past a very scared Clara who has a whole bedroom set up in the secret basement. He drags her past into another room. He goes back upstairs to answer the door to the police that Paula called. He invites them in and pretends like nothing has happened, showing no signs of nervousness. When they leave, he goes back down to question Paula, and he places a lock around her neck that is looped around a large pole. He asks her how she knew about him, and then she tells him she found out about Ingrid. She tells him she has the autopsy report in her car. He asks if she is joking, and she tells him no. Eduardo doesn't notice he dropped some chalk, and Paula discreetly places it in her pocket. Eduardo leaves her to go check her car to find the report and hide it. While he is gone, Paula uses her feet to open the door to the main basement room where Clara is trapped, so she might get to her and help her. Eventually, she gets the door open, and she urges Clara to be brave and help her. She throws her some chalk to erase the boundaries and extend it, so she can hide somewhere and then plan to run out to get help. Eduardo comes back down into the basement and he cannot find Clara. He calls her and sees she has drawn more chalk lines, but still cannot find her. He sees the door where Paula is open and asks her where she is. While he is distracted, Clara draws her way out of the basement, opens the door, and then Eduardo sees her escaping. He runs over, but Clara bolts him in so he cannot get out. She draws chalk to get up the stairs and out into his kitchen, and then she heads to his front door. She is so frightened to step foot outside, but she can see Simon in his house on the phone, pacing back and forth, and yells out to him, but he cannot hear her. Bravely, she steps out of Eduardo's house and walks up the path to Simon and Paula's house. But then Eduardo's wife Mate comes home and sees Clara. She tries to gain her trust, then grabs her and drags her back into the house and back to Eduardo. The next morning, Mate negotiates with Eduardo that she will forget about what he does in the basement if he lets her see her boys whenever she wants and never asks them to come back to their house to visit. Eduardo agrees. She tells Eduardo she is going out to the garden, and as she opens the front door, she realizes she had forgotten to clean off Clara's hand marks all over the front door. The police burst into her house and arrest her, and also Eduardo, and discover the basement. Clara and Paula are rescued. Many weeks later, Paula has a Skype call with Clara, who is now living with her maternal grandparents, and Paula stands up during the call, revealing she is pregnant. The end.